Okay, so I believe the Ben Yehoyada asks, I don't understand. I don't understand. The halacha is that for the three Averes HaChamurais, Yoharg Vayavor. What happens if somebody is not able to withstand in the soim? And because of that, he's over on the three Averes HaChamurais, but under duress, only because he's being forced. Like in the case of Bavel, where Nevuchnatzer was forcing everybody to do Avodah Zarah, that was all under duress. As a matter of fact, it was at the penalty of death. Look what happened to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, who didn't want to do Avodah Zarah. So why would that have been a reason for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to want to destroy Klal Yisrael? The loch is, if someone is over one of the Shalosh Chamurais under duress, it's considered an onius. It's a Chel Hashem, but it's considered an onius, and there is no Chiv Misa for it. If someone has a gun held to his head, and he's told either do Avodah Zarah or I'll shoot you, and the person does Avodah Zarah, he's not Chayiv Misa. So why was Klal Yisrael Chayiv Misa? So there's two terutzim that are mentioned. One teretz that's mentioned is there's a difference if it's a yochid or if it's a rabbim. If it's a rabbim, if all of Klal Yisrael is threatened, then it's much worse. But I think the Ben Yehoyada, I think, is the one who says it. He says that they could have ran away. They should have all packed out of there. They should have left, and that's why there was a tviya, because it wasn't really. It was forced upon them to have to leave everything and walk away, but they could have walked away. Zok Gemara, v'Rabbanon lahecha aslu. We have Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah. They survived being in the Kivshon Eish, which was a huge nace, which was overwhelmed the whole region. What happened to them? There's no mention of Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah after the story. Zok Gemara, Amarav. The Ayin Hara Mesu. They died due to Ayin Hara. So they died right away. Can you imagine after such a huge triumph, then they died right away because of Ayin Hara. Shmuel Amar Beroik Tovu. They drowned in Roik. Rashi says, what do you mean they drowned in Roik? All of the goyim were spitting at the Eden. How in the world could you people do Avodah Zarah with a god like that? It's not shaykh. And because of that, there was so much saliva that they drowned. Now, those who learn, of course, doesn't mean there was that much saliva. It means in the humiliation of the fact that they were so humiliated by the nations of the earth, they die from humiliation, from embarrassment. They made Aliyah. After that story, they said, we're going back to Eretz Yisrael. V'nasu noshim, and they got married in Eretz Yisrael. V'helidu bonim uvanais, and they gave birth to children. Zok Gemara kitanoi. It's a machlokes tonight. Rabbi Eliezer Aimer b'ayin hara mesu. Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah died through ayin hara. B'shu Aimer b'roik tovu v'chachamim Aimer olu le'eretz Yisrael v'nosu noshim v'helidu bonim uvanais. Shenemar, it says in the pasuk, Shema na Yeshua hakoyin hagadol. Yeshua was a koyin gadol. He lived in Eretz Yisrael. And the Navi says, Ata you v'rei'echa, on your buddies, hayoshvim l'fanecha that are sitting in front of you, ki anshe moifei seima. These are people who had nisim. So who is the Navi?
Is this before the Churban or after the Churban?
It must have been before the Churban. Well, when Yechanya was sent into Golus during those 13 years, was the Beis Mikdash destroyed yet? I don't think it was.
No, maybe not. Yeah. Okay.
So Klal Yisrael was under oppressive rule, but I think the Beis Hamikdash was still standing. So Yeshua Kohen Gadol was told, you and your buddies, Kianchi Moivesema. So who is the Navi referring to? Ezoheim Anoshim Shenasalahan Moifis. Who are the people who are famous for a great nace that was done with them? Havi Oimer Zechananya Mishael Vazaya. Freiktgemar v'Daniel Hechanothel. What happened to Daniel? He was one of the four, as we saw yesterday in the story. So where did he disappear to? Zokt Gemara Omarav Lamichra Nahara Rabba B'Tveria. He was sent away to dig a river in Tveria. Ushmul Amar, he was sent away Lasuye Bizra Dasfasta, to bring certain type of some type of grain. Now, why would he have been sent away? So I believe Rashi says, let me just scroll up so that I could see the Rashi. So Rashi is at the bottom of the first column. Why wasn't he thrown in with them? He also refused to do the Avodah. So he was sent Lachbar Ulahoitzi Nahar B'Tveria, to dig a river in Tveria, or to sell a har, or Lahavi Zera Shal Esav, some type of grass, Shumaichel Behema, Shalchun Nevuchnatzer, and Lasuye Chazir Mitzrayim. So basically, he was sent on a mission. He was sent away on a mission by Nevuchnatzer. I think the Gemara will tell us in a moment why Nevuchnatzer would have sent him away. But as an aside for the Gemara, how is it possible that Nebuchadnezzar could have sent Daniel to bring Chazerim from Mitzrayim? But Tanya, we learned, Tudas Harayfe Omar, Tudas Harayfe said, Ein para v'chazera yoytze mi Alexandria shal Mitzrayim, she'ein choyt chinoim shalo, b'shvil sheloi, b'shvil sheloi teleit. The Mitzrayim had very, very good animals, and they didn't want anyone to breed them and produce their own. And because of that, they would rip out the womb. So why in the world would Daniel have brought them if they would have had their womb ripped out? Because again, Mitzrayim didn't want anybody to reproduce what they had. So Zok to Gemara, Zutri Icy, he bought really small babies, animals, and because of that, Beloy Daitayu, they didn't think that those were being bought to breed because they were very young animals. So that's how the Nil got away with it. Taner Rabbanan, Shloisha Hayu Ba'isa Eitza. There were 3 people in the Eitza of sending the Nil away. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, v'Daniel v'Nevuchnatzer. HaKadosh Baruch Hu Omar, Nezel Daniel Mehacha. Why should we get rid of Daniel? Why shouldn't he be here in Bavel when Nevuchnatzer tried to kill Hanani Mishal Bazariah? It's the Leimer B'Schusi is Natzel. B'Schusi is Natzel. HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't want people to say that, you know why Hanani Mishal Bazariah was Nisnatzel? Not in their own schus. It was in the schus of Daniel, because Daniel was so revered there. He didn't want Daniel to sort of eclipse them. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted Daniel out of the picture. With Daniel himself says, I don't want to be here. Ezel Moihacha, the loy lekayim be, keep psile Elohayim tisrifun veish. The Rebbeinu Shalom said, you got to burn Avodah Zarah. Daniel was afraid that, the Rashi tells us that after Daniel saw the writing on the wall, he was so unique, he was so holy, Nebuchadnezzar treated him like a getchka a little bit. He treated him like a deity. And because of that, he was afraid that if he's considered like a getchka, he'll end up being burned. So he decided he needs to get out of there. Interesting enough, Rabbi Magulis asks, we know that a behema, a balchai, cannot become a Avodah Zarah. Doesn't become usher. Now, if someone serves a balchai, it's no longer allowed to be brought onto Mizbeach as a korban, but you don't have to kill the animal. So that's an animal. A person who said it could become a Avodah Zarah, why was he worried about it? Rabbi Magula said, you could say that even though it doesn't become usher but not an animal, but Lemaisa, it is impacted by the fact that it was served because it becomes usher to be brought as a korban. So it could be Daniel didn't want such a pekam. Okay, Nevuchnatzer Amar, why did Nevuchnatzer want to get rid of Daniel? Amar, he said, Yazel Daniel Mehacha, let's get rid of Daniel. You know why? The Loilemru Kalya Leloike Binura. Here I made him into a gut, and then I'm going to burn him too, because he's doing Avodah Zarah. I'd rather have, because he doesn't want to bow down to the Tzelem, I'd rather get him out of here. So I didn't mention earlier, but one of them, unfortunately, speak out when we were learning earlier that he was sent away for these random projects. The reason why Nebuchadnezzar sent him away is because he was embarrassed that Daniel was sort of his right-hand man, and he was embarrassed in front of Daniel to kill Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah, so he wanted to get him out of the way so that he could feel free to burn Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah.
Yossi,
So anyway, these are the reasons. I'm sorry?
You hear me?
Yes, sure.
Before when you were saying that with the Chazerim that they ripped out the wombs, how did they breed their own?
In Mitzrayim?
Yeah.
In Mitzrayim, no, only the ones for export.
Only ones for export. I thought all of them were.
That's right. No, I don't know why they had to rip out the womb. I don't see why they couldn't have just put on a tariff, a 25% tariff. But instead, they made sure that any animal that left Mitzrayim from their high-grade animals couldn't reproduce. Okay, so let's see what the Gemara says weiter. Uminayin the Sogidle. How do we know that Daniel was treated like an avodah zarah by Nebuchadnezzar? Sogidle means, how do we know that Nebuchadnezzar bowed down to Daniel? Tichsiv badin malka Nebuchadnezzar nofal al anpoi ula Daniel sagid. So the pasuk says that Nebuchadnezzar, after he saw what Daniel did, and he read the writing on the wall that nobody else was able to read, to warn Nebuchadnezzar about his downfall, ever since then he treated Daniel like a god. Koyamar Hashem Tzavakos Elokei Yisrael El Achov ben Kulei Vel Tzidkiah ben Maasiyah Hanavim Lachem B'Shmi Lashek. So Kadosh Baruch Hu said, transmitted Nevuah, I think it was to Yirmiyah, about the fake Nevi'im. They were fake Nevi'im that Yirmiyah had to deal with in his time. Uksiv says, for Lekeach Mem Klola L'chol Golos Yehuda Asher Babavel Lemar Yisimcha Hashem Kitzitkiyo Ucha Achov Asher Kolim Melech Bavel Ba'esh. So the Nevuah said about these false Nevi'im that they're going to be cursed just like Tzidkiyahu and Achav that were burnt by Nebuchadnezzar. So it says kolim is a little bit of a strange word to use for burning. Freik the Gemara, Asher Sarfam Ba'esh, Asher Sarfam Lo Nemar Ela Asher Kolim. What's happened to the lotion of Kloya? Omar Reb Yochanan Mishum Reb Shimon Yochim Melamed She'asan Kikloyos. They weren't burnt to ashes. They were burnt to a little bit of a crisp, like when you roast little kernels of wheat to sweeten them. They're roasted, but they're not totally destroyed. So they weren't totally burnt to ashes, they were just roasted a little bit. Yan Asher Asu Nevola B'Yisrael. What did these two fake Nevi'im do? Tzidkiah and Achav, what did they do? What they did was, they did an Nevola B'Yisrael by in Afu Es Neshei Re'eim. They did znus with the wives of their friends, with Eish Ish. Maya, what exactly did they do? What is the story that the Navi is referring to? So this is what they did. They approached the daughter of Nebuchadnezzar. Achav Omerla, Navi Sheker number 1 told her, Koyamar Hashem. This is what Hashem said. Hishmi al Tzidkiah. Listen to Tzidkiah. He wants to be mizana with you. I'm bringing you a prophecy from God that you should have relations with him. You should let him violate you, and they did this as a tag team. And then what did Tzidkiah say? Koyamar Hashem Hashmi El Achov. So she thought this is funny. She has two Nevi'im that are each telling her to have relations with the other one. What's going on? Ozlov or Amrle Lavua. She told her father, these guys want to be intimate with me, and they said that they have a Nevuah. Amr Law. So the Melech Nebuchadnezzar said that this is nonsense. Elohayim Shalelu Soine Zimahu. He hates Zima. Ki also Lagaboch. The next time they try to come to convince you, Shadrinu Ligaboy. Send them over to us. Ki also Ligaboch. So the next time they came, Shadrisinu Ligabe Avu. She said, you know what? Speak to my father. He's in charge of my Shaduch. Amar Lahu. So he asked them, Man Amar Lachoy. Who told you that this is a good thing to do? Amr, what do you mean? We're Nevi'im. HaKadosh Baruch Hu told us that we should be sleeping with your daughter. Nevuchnatzer said, "You think you're the only Nevi'im I have?" V'Chananya, Mishael, v'Azariah, Sheltinu. I asked them, v'Amruli, and they told me, "Osir, it's Osir." Amrulei. So they said to him, "Ananami Nevi, Kavasayu. We're just Nevi'im like them." Maybe they weren't zoicha to this prophecy, but we were told this prophecy that your daughter needs to be with us. I'm a little bit skeptical about you guys. Are you real Nevi'im? I don't know. I think I want to test you out. I want to test you out. And what's the test? I know how to test Nevi'im. You know how I test Nevi'im? I want to test you to see if you're legit. The same way I tested you, I tested Chananya, Mishael, v'Azariah. Now they found themselves literally in hot water. Amrulei, they told him, Inun Tlaso Havi. There's three of us. I'm sorry, there's three of them. When the power of three Nevi'im together, yes, the Aish cannot impact them. But on Vanan train, we're only two. So we'll be impacted by the fire. So it's not a fair test. Amalu, no problem. Let's make it fair. Pick for you guys. Mandabisu, Badaichu. Any Konovi, any one of your pals that you want to bring along with you, bring along. We'll throw you into fire together. So who did they decide to pick? They had Daniel right there, who was a great Navi. We'll soon see, he might not have been a Navi, but he was definitely a great person. We had him right there, but they decided no, they wanted to import somebody from Eretz Yisrael. Amr, they said, Yeshua Kohen Gadol. We want to bring him. Why Punk did they want to bring him? So they figured, Leisa Yeshua, the Nafish Zechusei. He's a holy man, he's a Kohen Gadol, Umegan Alon, and he was hoping that the Chuzim of Yeshua would protect them from the fire. So Achsuyu, they brought him back from Eretz Yisrael. Shadinu, they threw him in the fire. Inu Itlu, they were burnt. Yeshua Kohen Gadol ichruche monei. The bottom of his beged got a little singed, but he wasn't impacted by the fire. Shenemar vayareni es Yeshua haKohen Gadol oimed lefnei Malach Hashem. Utziv vayom Hashem al hasoton yigar Hashem b'cho hasoton. Omerlei. So they said, Yodana the Tzadika at. So these two false Nevi'im, they got burnt, so they're eliminated. But now Nevuchnatzer sees that Yeshua Kohen Gadol survived the flames of the Kivsha. So Nevuchnatzer said, I see you're a tzaddik. Elamai time hanya bach porta nura. But Lamaisa, you didn't come out scot-free. You got a little bit singed. Your regadim got singed. Chananya, Mishael, v'Azariah, lo yahanya bu klal. They weren't impacted at all by the fire. As a matter of fact, we're soon going to see, not only didn't they get burnt by the fire, they didn't even smell from smoke. Now, I don't know about you, but I can't even burn my chametz on Erev Pesach and not come home smelling like a smoked fish. And Hananya, Mishael, v'Azariah were in a kivshon, and when they came out, they didn't even smell from smoke. So Zokt Gemara, Amalei, they told him, well, I'll tell you why. Inu talosa havu. Yeshua said they were three tzaddikim together. Vanochad, I'm only one tzaddik, so I wasn't so resistant to the flames. Omer lei, don't tell me one person alone can't resist the flames. Avram yochid hava. Avram was a yochid, and he was thrown into a kivshon, and he was not impacted at all. So Yeshua could go to say, Shkoyach, Avram was by himself a tzaddik. Hosam lehav rishon badei. Lo yisyai v'shusel l'nura. They didn't let the flame light up at all, because Avram was there and there was no one bad there. So the fire couldn't even be shaded at all. But Hacha Havarsham Badi. There were Rishon with me who were to be burnt. So the fire had to be shaded. So if a Zoivite with fire, that's much harder. It's easier to stop the fire. But once there's fire, I'm going to get a little singed. Haini da Amriyinchi. This is what the Velt says. Trei Udu Yuveshi. The Chadrativa, if you have two dried out pieces of wood that could be easily kindled, sitting with a log that's moist, ukton yuveshi l'retiva. Eventually, the fire that's in the dry wood will be able to dry out and cause the moist wood to burn as well. So, Freik the Gemara, Lamaisa, that's a very good retort for Nevuchnatzer. But what's the real reason why Yeshua Kohen Gadol was impacted? My time Yanish. Omar Papa, Shahayu Bonav Noisin Noshim She'enon Hagunosh Lakahuna. His sons married women who should not have been royu to marry Kohanim, and he didn't protest strongly enough. He was wearing dirty clothing. So there's a couple of questions that come up over here. The first question is, why did they pick Yeshua Kohen Gadol and not pick Daniel, who was right there? So there's a couple of terutzim that are offered in the Mefarshim. One of the terutzim is, they thought that Daniel was such a big Baal Maifis, bigger than Yeshua Kohen Gadol. And they were afraid that Daniel was such a big tzaddik that he would have been able to be in the fire and not get impacted at all, and they would get burnt, which is in fact what happened with Yeshua Kohen Gadol. But they calculated that would happen with Daniel. And they thought that what would happen with Yeshua Kohen Gadol is, since he wouldn't be Zoichet at such a big nace, that they would get burnt, and he wouldn't, maybe because of that, a smaller nace that would have stopped the fire from coming in the first place. So that's how they miscalculated, and that's how they asked for Daniel. The other question here is, why would Nevuchnatzer say that I spoke to Hanani, Mishael, Azariah, and they told me Znus is Osir? The Torah says Znus is Osir. So why would Nevuchnatzer have had to say, oh, Hanani, Mishael, Azariah told me that it's Osir? The teretz is, if these two fake Nevi'im would have come along and told Nevuchnatzer and his daughter that Znus is mutter across the board, then he could say, what do you mean the Torah says it's Osir? But that's not what they were saying. They were telling the daughter of Nevuchnatzer, and then to Nevuchnatzer, Havandas Nus is Osir. But here there's a special nevuah that, in this specific case, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants your daughter to sleep with these two Nevi'im, one after the other. Why? Because if she becomes inseminated by two Nevi'im back to back, you will be zoicha that your einiklach will be Nevi'im. So basically, the nevuah was, the fake nevuah that they were telling Nevuchnatzer was, by her having relations with two Nevi'im back to back, that's going to insert DNA of nevuah into her, and then Nevuchnatzer will be zoicha to children Nevi'im. That was the nonsense that they were trying to verkoif to Nevuchnatzer, and on that, Hanani, Mishael, Azariah said, absolutely nonsense. That's not how one becomes a Navi, by having his mother have relations, intimacy with two Nevi'im back to back. That's an absolutely nonsensical idea, and that's why it had to be refuted by Hanani, Mishael, Azariah. Okay, so let's see the Gemara weiter. Amrav Tanchman, Dorish Bar Kapara B'tzipuri. My dichsiv, it says in the pasuk, Sheish hasa'arim ha'ela nosanli. So this is what Rus, I believe, told Naomi, that Boaz gave her these 6 barleys. So the Gemara wants to know, what do you mean 6 barleys? What type of gift is that? My sheish hasa'arim. If you're going to tell me that Boaz gave her 6 little barley kernels, like that's a joke. Is that a matana that's fit for Boaz to give Rus 6 little grains of barley? That doesn't make sense at all. Okay, let's turn on to Abed Beis. Ella, what it must mean is shalosh sa'in, 6 sa'in, which is a huge measurement. For the Gemara, it's impossible that would have been given to Rus to carry home. It's impossible that a woman can carry that much. So it can't mean that either. So what is it? Ella, what it must be is he actually gave her just 6 little kernels of barley. But it wasn't for the little kernels that he gave her the gift. It was remez law. He was maramis to her. She's going to have 6 descendants. That each of these 6, each of these descendants, each of these 6 descendants will have 6 very special brachos. And these are the 6 descendants that Boaz was referring to: David, Umashiach, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah. David Ichsiv, and it lists off the schusim of David. Bayan echad mehan ha'arim. And this is actually referring to Doeg HaDoimi. Doeg HaDoimi, the Rasha, the Baal Lashon Hara, who was trying to take down David, said, Vayomer hine re'isi ben liyishai beis halachmi. I saw, and he was saying this to be derogatory. The reason why he was saying this to Shaul is to praise David in front of Shaul, to rate on Shaul, to hate David even more. So he had bad intentions, the Gemara is going to tell us, in praising David here. And he said, Hine re'isi ben liyishai beis halachmi. Is Yodea Nagin. He knows instruments, right? He played the harp. The Gibor Chayil. He was a strong Gibor Chayil. The Ishmael Chama. That's number 3. The Novain Dovar. That's number 5. The Ish Tayar. He was a man of stature. Vashem Ima is Mila number 6. So we're going to see what these Milas are soon. But he had these 6 Milas. At least you see them at first by David. We don't yet see how they were in the game, but the other 5 children, but we'll see soon. This entire pasuk, Loy Amru Doeg Elabel Loshoin Hara. Doeg's intention was to rate on Shaul, to hate David HaMelech. Yodea Nagin, what does that mean? Sheyodea Li Shoyel. He knows how to ask a good kasha. Gibor Sheyodea Lahoishiv. He knows how to answer a good kasha with a beautiful teretz. Ish Milchama Sheyodea Lisa Velitan B'Melchamta Shal Torah. He could tummel learning whenever there's a big brawl in the Bismedish. He'll be in the center of it, tummeling away. Okay. Ish Toyar Shemar Panim Balocha. He knows the right answer, and he's able to come out with the proper halacha. V'nova in dovar, Ishemei bin dovar mitach dovar. He understands one thing from another. V'Hashem imoi is the ultimate compliment. Sha'alocha kamoisoi b'chol mokim. We always paskin like him. He's always the one who is proven to be right. B'chulu, out of all, as Doeg was listing off these wonderful milas that David had, Amar lahu, Shaul responded, I'm not impressed. Yonis and B'ni Kamoyu, my son Yonis has those same milas. But even the Amar lei V'Hashem imoi, that's Milta de B'didei Namiloi Havabe. Even Shaul HaMelech didn't have Hashem imoi. So therefore, it's Cholash Daite. That's when Shaul became sad and upset. And then he started becoming jealous and angry and put David at great risk. How do you see that Shaul did not have Hashem imoi? The B'Shaul ksiv v'chol hashiyifna yarshia, u'v'David ksiv v'chol hashiyifna yatzliach. Now, if you look up the Psukim, it doesn't say exactly those Lashonis, but it says generally that. So Shaul didn't succeed in his psak working out halacha l'maisa, and David did.
Shaul originally was a Mashiach Hashem. He was chosen by their Rebbeinu Shalom through the Navi.
But it could be still didn't have Hashem Ima. He could have been Mashiach, but not necessarily the halacha like him.
To
qualify as Mashiach,
question of timing.
I
think originally he was Mashiach Hashem. The Melucha could have been his.
You mean he was actually the Mashiach itself? You mean as one of the 6 kids?
Mashiach, he was actually anointed by Shmuel on the instructions of the Rebbeinu Shalom. So literally a Mashiach Hashem.
He was potentially.
No, he was anointed already, but
he was Moshuach. Yeah. In the he was, but that doesn't mean that doesn't mean that he had Vashemima. It doesn't mean that
you would think
always carried.
If Hashem chose him, I would imagine Hashem would be with him. But it was through the chet of not killing Agag.
So you're telling me
he lost
at the time it was no longer Hashem Imoy, but could be at one point there was Hashem Imoy. Which makes it even more painful for him that his power was usurped sort of by David HaMelech.
Right.
Okay. So Zok to Gemara, Minolan the Doeg Haba. How do you know that this Nar that was the one who told Shaul about David, how do you know it's referring to Doeg HaDoimi? Zok to Gemara, Ksiv Hacha Bayan Echod Mehan Arim. Echod Mehan Arim refers to Meyuchad Shebid. He was unique from all the Narim. He was better. And we know Doeg was the best. He was gathered in front of Hashem, meaning he was sitting and learning. So that's how we know that this Nar, the Echad Ben Arim, is referring to Doeg. Okay? Mashiach. How do we know that David was Mashiach? What does it mean he was Mashiach? Ruach Hashem, Ruach Chachma Bina, ruach etzo gevura, ruach das v'yiras Hashem, which is what we're mispal for, I believe, in the Yehirotzain by Haitzah Sefer Torah on Yom Tov. Uchsiv v'herichu b'yiras Hashem. He sniffed out yiras Hashem. Zok the Gemara, Omer B'Alexandri, Melamed Shatinu Mitzvahs V'Yisurin Kirechayim. He was loaded up. He was loaded up with mitzvahs and yisurin, like a rechayim is a millstone, which is very, very heavy, and he was loaded up. So Rashi v'hainu ve'ericha lashon rechayim. So it wasn't lashon smell, which I wrongfully touched. Rather means he was overloaded with mitzvahs and yisurim kirechayim. Rav Omar the moirach vadoin. He was able to sniff out the emes of pshat. In other words, sometimes you need to have a sixth sense. You have to have sensitivity to tapos what's right. He was able to do that. T'chsiv v'loy lemara einov yishpoit. V'shofat b'tzedek dalim. He was able to properly paskin on 4 people. V'chiech b'mishar le'aniyei aretz. And he was able to properly mishpat everybody. In other words, what it means is he didn't only have halacha, he was able to shmekois what was right. Rav, let's see Rashi. Rav Amar, my verichu, the murach vadoin, meaning shemariach ba'adam, he's able to sniff out a person. V'shoifeit v'yadea mi'achayiv. He was able to figure out who was chayiv, who was potter, not necessarily by following the exact guidelines of the halacha, but he had a sixth sense to chap what was going on over here. He had a very good wisdom and intuition. Shenemar loylemar einav yishboit v'loyle mishnah ozav yachiach. Even though it wasn't what he saw and what he heard. V'afilu ochi v'shofat b'tzedek dalim. He was still able to paskin righteously because of his intuition. He was able to understand what was going on. He was able to see more than the average person. Zokt Gemara weiter. Bar Kuziva. Who is Bar Kuziva? Bar Kuziva is referring to Bar Kochva. Now, Rashi says he was Am Mimalche Hurdis. He was a Malche Hurdis. If he was going to be Mashiach, he wasn't from Hurdis, so there's a big shaila about who this Bar Kuziva was. Now, Bar Kuziva was called Bar Kuziva by he was actually the first false Mashiach. And even Rabbi Kiva thought he was Mashiach. Rabbi Kiva called him Bar Kochva because of the pasuk Dorach Kochav Miyakov. His star was born from Yaakov. That's why he referred to him as Bar Kochva. But Bar Kuziva was the secular authorities called him a fraud, Bar Kuziva. So anyway, Malach Tartan Shnin, he was a king for 12 years. Upalga, 12 and a half years. Amalula Rabbanon, he told the Rabbanon, I'm Mashiach. For he was the first false Mashiach. Amrulay, b'Mashiach Ksiv, it says by Mashiach, the Moirich Vadoin. He had a sense that he would be able to sniff out the truth. Nechsi Anan, let's check you out to see if you have that ability. Moirich Vadoin. Kivan the Chaziu Deloy, they saw that he wasn't able to Moirich Vadoin. He didn't have that sense. Katlu, they killed him. Katlu Dananya, Daniel Chananya Mishal Vazaya. The Chsiv, it says by them, Asher Ein Bahem Kol Ma'oim. I'm sorry, I messed this up. Chatu, they killed him, period. The Chachamim killed him. The Chachamim of that time killed Bar Kochva. So the Gemara is just trying to illustrate that this was one of the milas, Murach Vadoin, that the six descendants of Rus had. The next of the list are Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, Vazariah. So there were 6 children. So we had David was one of them, right? Who are the 6? So we're going to go back. David, Mashiach. Okay, right. So we know Mashiach has to have it because we brought the Raya from Bar Kochva. Just he didn't have it, and he was supposed to have it. It's a Raya. He's not Mashiach. And now we have to go through the last 4. The Daniel, Chanem, Shavazai also had these miles. The Chsivu, it says by him, the Chsivu regarding them, Asher Ein Bohem Kol Ma'um, they didn't have any mum, V'toiv Mayra, U'maskilim B'chal Chochma, V'yoydei Das, U'mavin and Mada, V'asher Koyach B'hem Lamoid B'heichal Melech. Ulalamdim sefer v'loshin custom. So that's what the pasuk says about them. They had all these milas which mirror the milas, the 6 milas that they have to have. Zokmar my asher ein b'hem kol mum. What does the pasuk mean when it says about the Nil Chanani Mishal Vazaya? They had no mum. Omar Abchama afilu kerivdo de kuslisa loy havabuhu. They were so healthy, never mind spiritually, but even physically, they never even needed hakozos adam, which was something that most people needed. What does it mean they're able to stand in the Hechel HaMelech? They would hold themselves back from any type of joking. They were very serious. They were standing in front of a king. They never schmoozed. They withheld sleep from themselves. And even umamidin al atzmon if they're standing there by the king, they wouldn't even go to the bathroom. They would hold themselves in because emes malchus. And the Shahar Mitzuin Balacha asks, "Isn't there a problem about the shaksu?" So he says, "Could be there's only an issue to Rabbanon, and because of kavod malchus, they withheld." The Yiyu Behem Mibnei Yehuda, the Neil Chananya Mishol Vazaya. Amar Rabbi, Hulan Mibnei Yehuda. The Neil Chananya Mishol Vazaya are Mibnei Yehuda, which fits in good because they're eniklach of Rus and Boyas. Rab Shmuel bar Nachmeni Amar, Daniel Mibnei Yehuda. Daniel was Mibnei Yehuda, but Chananya Mishol Vazaya Mishar Shvatim were from other Shvatim, which means Rashi says this would argue on what we said earlier on the Tana that said earlier that Chananya Mishol Vazaya were from the children of Rus. Umibanecha Asher Yetzi Mimcha Asher Toiled Yikhu. So the Nevi'us was said that your children are going to be taken by the Nevuchnatzer, and they will be srisim, childless, in the Heichel, in the court of Melech Bavel. So what does it mean by the Nevuah? They'll be srisim. Ravam are srisim mamish. They were actually misuris by the king, and Rashi says the king would sometimes do that so that this person shouldn't be busy with family, should be focused on his job. Rabbi Chanina Amar, Shenisdarsa Avodah B'Meim. Chanani Mishal Vazaya weren't actually Misuras. Rather, they were Mesaris of Avodah Zarah. They totally neutered the Koyach of Avodah Zarah in their times. Zokmar, Bishlomo Lamand Amar, Shenisdarsa Avodah Zarah B'Meim. If you're going to learn that that's pshat, that they weren't actually Srisim. Rather, they were referred to by the Navi as Srisim because they neutered Avodah Zarah. Hani Dechsev, V'chaval lo yisi b'hain. Nevuchnatzer, when they were in the fire, he said they look in perfect shape. So if they were in perfect shape, then that makes sense. If they were shrizim, so they're not in perfect shape. They're damaged goods. What does it mean when Nevuchnatzer said there's absolutely no damage to them? What do you mean they're misuras? He didn't mean they have no damage. He meant that they weren't impacted by the fire, but the fact that they were physical shrizim. I vaksiv bereach nur loy adus behen. But it says two things. It says Sai there was no damage, and Sai there was no sign of fire. So that means besides the fact that there's no damage to the fire, Nevuchnatzer said there's mamish no mumen in them. So no, it means loy chavlo v'loy reicha. And this is what I meant earlier. Not only weren't they burnt, when they walked out of the kitchen aish, they smelled fresh. They didn't smell like smoked fish, like we smell after we come home from burning our chametz. Zakt Gemara, Bishlama leman da'amar shenistar savoid zarvim. If you learn that that's pshat in the Nevi'os, that that's what happened to them, so then it makes sense. Hani dechsiv, the pasuk says, "Koyam Hashem lasarisim asher yim shemur shapshoisai." We laying this in the Haftorah on a tiny siba by mincha. Koyam Hashem lasarisim. This is what Hashem tells the sarisim. If it's referring to tzaddikim, then it makes sense that Hashem would publicly call Chananya, Mishal, Vazaya, Sarisim. Elalamanda Amar, Sarisim Mamish. If they were Taka Sarisim, Mishtoi, Krab, Ganusha, the Tzadiki, would the Pasuk publicly announce this mum that they had? No, maybe ha v'ha hababuhu. Maybe even according to the Mandamar that they're real Sarisim, but they also had the Mila that they were Messiahs of Avodah man. So when the Novi's announcing Kay Hashem Saris, Kay Hashem Sarisim, it doesn't mean Sarisim Mamish. They're referring to the Mila that they had that they wiped out of Avodah. If they were mamish shrisim, hanyu dechsiv, it says, we say that in the Torah, and the Sati Lahem, Bevesu v'chaymoisai, Yad v'shem, toiv mi banim u'ibanois. Hashem says, you might not have children, but I'm going to give you better than children. Elamanda Amishin the stars have observing man, and in fact they weren't sharisim. What do you mean, my toiv mi banim u'ibanois? It's masha they don't have children, but avada they would have children. What it means is, they taka had children. They were not sharisim. They had children, but they died. So it's saying that what I'm going to give them, the Yad V'Shem that I'm going to give them is even better. The pasuk goes weiter and says, Shem Olam Etanoi. I'll give them a permanent name. Asher Lo Yikarish, that will never be torn away. Meaning, I'm going to give them a perpetual. I'm giving them a perpetual zecher. How do I give them a perpetual zecher if they don't have children? Rav Tanchum Darsh Bar Kapara B'Tzipurei Zeh Sefer Daniel Shenikra Shemoi. There was a sefer of Novi that was written, that was named Daniel. That's a permanent zikaron for you. So that's what it was referring to. Let's analyze this. If you look in the Novi Ezra, all of the nevuos there are really nevuos that were said to Nehemiah. So I bezoi v'Nehemiah ben Chakalia my time aloi krimis fal shemei. So how come it's not? Why is it called Ezra? It should be called Nehemiah. Amar bir Abba because Nehemiah was a little proud. He held of himself a little bit, and he held it was coming to him. That's why he lost the schus to have the Novi named after him. Shenemar, what did he say? Zachar li Elokai l'toiva. Remember me for good and help me out. Is that such a bad thing to say? David said the same thing. David nami meimar Omar. Zachreni Hashem b'tzoyna mecha. Pakdeni b'shuasecha. Dr. Gemara, David wasn't making an announcement. It's a kumpmir. David rachmei udekaboy. David was begging Hashem, please remember me, not a kumpmir. So again, Reuben Margulis asks, yes, how they both said the same statement. How does the Gemara know to say that David was just asking for Achmonis B'Anova and Nehemiah was sort of demanding it? Zokter, beautiful. Look at the Lashonis they used. Nehemiah said, Zacharli Elokai l'toiva. Elokai is din. In din, it's a kumpmich. David said, Zacharni Hashem Lashon Rachamim b'Tzayna Mecha. So David was asking for Achmonis while Nehemiah was saying, even in din, it's a kumpmich. You know why Nehemiah didn't have the sefer named after him? He put down the earlier generation. The leaders that were before me were hard on the nation. They took, I'm a much better leader. So Vibaltis, he sort of put down previous leaders. He lost his name. Va'af al Daniel, shegodol mimenu, even Daniel, who was greater than Nehemiah, Siper, he spoke against Daniel. Uminol the godol mimenu. How do you know that Daniel was greater than Nehemiah? The Chsivit says, "Isiani Daniel levate es Hamara, va'anoshim asher hayu imi lo yiro es Hamara." I myself, Zok Daniel, I saw the writing on the wall. Nobody else saw the writing on the wall that was with me. But they became very afraid. And they ran away. Who were the anoshim that were with Daniel? Which were Nevi'im. They didn't see it, yet Daniel saw it. So let's just turn on to the Dalit, and then we'll be one line left. I'm sorry that we're going over here. So Zok Gemara, Inu Adifi Mine. They were greater than him. V'yu Adifinayu, and he was better than them. Inu Adifi Mine. They are greater than him. The Inu Nevi. Kagai Zechayim Malach were Nevi'im. V'yu Daniel Loi Navi. He was not a Navi. V'yu Adifinayu, but he was better than them. The Iu Chaza, he saw. The Inu Loi Chazu. And they didn't see. So if they didn't see the writing on the wall, my time it said they got afraid. What were they afraid from? They didn't see anything. Even though they didn't see anything, their neshama saw, and it created fear in them. If someone suddenly gets a fear attack, a panic attack, even though you don't see anything and you don't know why you're having this panic attack, his mazel must sense that something's wrong. How do you fix a panic attack? Move away 4 amas from where you are. Inami, licorice krishma, or say krishma. If you're in a place where you can't say krishma, say the following chant. Don't come after me, Satan. Go after the fat izim in the shlachtos. Don't come to me. Okay, we'll stop here, Bez Hashem. I'm hoping tomorrow to be there. I hope to leave early enough tonight that I should be able to be there on time for tomorrow. If not, I'll do it remotely from the car.
Yossi,
Yes.
I have a name for the sheriff.
Oh, please.
The Sixth Sense.
Okay.